I've heard the cracks of lightning on Saturn amongst the helium storm that surrounds it. I've collected the pitch of ancient radio waves amongst the howls of dying stars. But the sound of a black hole this close is truly most haunting.
The most diverse city in the Commonwealth, with more than 63 languages spoken, directly from Malden, Massachusetts. This is Culture Matters.
Cultura importa.
La cultura importa.
摩顿市关注文化。
Culture Matters in Malden.
Well, my name is Jozef. I'm working at UMA. That's where we're at right now, and I'm joined with Anders and Tony, who are here to talk to me about the project To Air, which is a short film that came out this year, correct?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Correct. Okay. So would you guys mind introducing yourselves, maybe telling me what you're up to nowadays and what you do for a living?
Sure. So my name's Tony Martinez. I currently work for Mass General Hospital running a film studio for their psychiatry department. I also run a film company on the side called Second House Films, which is local in Malden where I'm based. And I don't have enough on my plate, I also run a conservation nonprofit.
Wow. That's amazing.
It's a lot.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot. Good for you.
And you're similar. You have a lot going on too.
I also have a lot of pots on the stove. So right now, my primary focus is on my company, Studio One, Boston. And so we do quite a bit of video production in the very boring talking head world, as opposed to the creative world, which is what we're interested in talking about today.
Yes.
So I do a fair bit of work with the state of Massachusetts. Additionally, I work some in IT, and then I'm also a student at Gordon Conwell, which is up on the North Shore, and I study mental health and counseling there. And this summer, I start working at Tufts Medical Center in Boston as well. So my focus is primarily on mental health right now as I study, but in order to pay the bills, I'm involved in both the video and the IT world. So
Wow. That is a lot of pots on the stove.
And he's a husband and a recent dog owner.
Congratulations.
Oh, thank
That's
you.
amazing.
Yeah, no, the dog. It
Congrats on the dog.
Yeah.
36 hours of labor to go get it.
Well, congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
It's a great accomplishment. So how do you two know each other?
Oh, shit. Well, you go first.
So I was sitting in a coffee shop in Somerville, and I looked over, and there was this guy who had 2 MacBook Pros on one little desk inside of a coffee shop. And as I was wrapping up my work, I looked over and I said, "Hey, is that the new MacBook Pro?" And he was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Can I just try the keyboard?" And he was like, "Sure." So I tried it. So, this is like this next level nerd thing going on at this point.
Yeah, something.
And so we just started talking. I don't really know why you had 2 MacBooks on a table.
Yeah, one was creative, the other one was business. And then all of a sudden, I just asked him, "Oh, you seem to know a lot about video. Did you work in a video background?" He said, "Yeah, I used to work for this investment company that focused on spine products, and I did video." And right then, I just said his name. Like, I just met this guy in the coffee shop, and I just said his name. "Are you Anders Johnson?" And then you gave me this look of, like, what? Like, how do you know? You just said my name. It's because we used to work at the same company. And
Wow.
he was in a position that I think with a year gap, eventually I filled. So we ended up working for the same company, and some of his login information was still saved at the company. I was like, "Oh, yeah, I know who you are." So it was a small world,
Yeah, that's incredible.
very small world.
Yeah, it's very strange. As it turns out, IT never changed the name of the computer. And so Tony ended up with the computer that had my name.
No
so he was
way.
like, "Oh, I know you. I've seen your work."
Yeah. So that's how we officially met. Is we just magically found each other in a coffee shop, and
What an amazing story. Yeah.
Meant to be.
Yeah, clearly. Well, so then how did you get involved with the project To Air?
So I went to grad school in England, and one of my colleagues then, named Nancy Cruz, who is the director of this film, she had been mentioning, and I'd known her for a while. She always had like a very competitive nature and getting things done and being very reliable. I'd seen over a few years that just people did not really give her the same treatment. Just like she would have things start and people kind of fell off the radar. And I just had this feeling of like, I don't like that. You know, like I
Mm.
want to, even though I'm not even there in the same country anymore, like I want to be involved in the next thing you do. And she just said, I'm working on this, or I think this would be really cool. We could do this contest for NASA. It's this big film contest. And I said, let's do it. Like, let's make it happen. And from there, we ended up building this team together along with myself, Anders, our writer, Jamie Reed, a VFX artist I was working with, and with Nancy. We all came together virtually, you know, because Anders wasn't in the same city as Malden. So you were on a Zoom call. Jamie's in LA. Neymar's in a different part of Boston. I'm here in Malden. She's in England. And so we ended up just forming this team. And then that's what started to create To Air, that whole project.
Yeah, the whole idea really came out of this contest that NASA was putting on. Recently, I think 2 years ago, NASA opened up their archive. And anybody can do this, honestly. If you're at home right now, you can go on NASA's website and you can look at pictures of the moon, Mars. You can go back in time all the way to the 60s, 50s, and before, and you can look at their entire media archive. And NASA created a contest where if we used a certain percentage of the film seeing NASA archival footage, then we could submit this film with a narrative surrounding it to this contest that they were running.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the original intention of creating this film, was for that contest. And so you'll notice if you watch the film that there's a number of different shots that are actually from NASA's archives, a variety of different things. Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. Yeah, I was going to ask about the contest. I wasn't even aware of that. But I was aware that they released their footage, and I went through myself and was just awestruck by the stuff that they were releasing. So I was going to ask what it was like to work with that and how much color grading did you put into that? Because I know you're credited for color grading on this project, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So in terms of the volume, so we shot on the Blackmagic 6K, but we shot in 4K. Mm-hmm. We shot here, actually. We did some exterior shots. I think you used a 4K GH4. Mm-hmm. And so the grading was actually done in Premiere. I didn't even take it through Resolve. So was happy to do it in Premiere.
For the NASA footage itself, was that just untouched?
We did touch it up. Crushed the blacks, expanded on the S curve with the color grade. Yeah, just gave it like a better treatment. Played with some of the color schemes, and then the original footage that we shot was given a whole treatment. Yeah.
And then the actual so Neymar, you mentioned he's credited for VFX. Is that the little probe float you see actually floating?
That's right.
Because I was wondering how that was kind of in post, put together. But that's such a creative way to use that footage and kind of add to it, where it isn't obnoxious, but it's just like subtle enough.
Yeah,
really enjoyed that.
He did a great job. I was over his shoulder on countless nights just watching him design the ship, and to render it, I would obviously be frame by frame, and I'd be with him rendering like a very low pre-res of the ship moving, and then I would give some instruction. For different ideas and shots. He did the rendering for the planets too. And, all of that looks great. It really does come down to, what's going to make it look either more lifelike, and to overuse this word cinematic, like what kind of treatment needs to be given to this to really create new shadows and have better contrast and play with the lighting a little bit. And so the color for that was a whole treatment, but once it was done, I think we were all really pleased with how it turned out.
It looks fantastic. Yeah,
Oh,
I really like that. And you're credited for music. Is that correct?
Well, so there's a specific part of the film in which a trumpet is played.
Yeah. Okay.
And it turns out that the actor who played the trumpet in the film doesn't actually play, but the trumpet was her father's. And it was special because on the day that she was playing that trumpet, and we were actually in the studio here at UMA, was a very important date related to her father who had owned that trumpet. So she had the opportunity to play that trumpet on that day. And then as we were, I think it was 3 a.m., and I was sitting with Tony and do we call him J.M. Elliott now, the writer?
We can call him that.
Yeah, we can call him J.M. Elliott, but Jamie. And we were trying to align appropriate music that is, played by a trumpet with whatever it was that she was playing with her fingers. So it's very much like a movie magic type of thing where she played something on the trumpet, and then we needed to, at least to submit this to NASA, we need to align what she had done with the trumpet and the cuts that were made in the editing so that it appeared to look like she was actually playing the trumpet. And so at least for the original submission, and now we actually had a real musician go back and change this. I was actually in Adobe Premiere using different audio clips to try to create, we got them off freesound.org, little audio clips, because someone went through and they played every single note on trumpet. Wow. And so then we used those to try to compose a form of like a musical tune that would align with the editing and with the different finger positions that Liz Bishop, who played that character, did.
That's so much more, you know, I feel like a lot of movies that have music in them, like I play guitar and, you know, they'll be clearly not playing the guitar and you'll see the fingers doing something completely different. So that's really impressive that you guys put in that extra effort to make it those details, you know.
I mean, it was enough to get it into the NASA contest and then a couple other, I think the Boston Sci-Fi Film Festival, it also was submitted with that music that I created. Mm-hmm. And then eventually we were able to have a real musician. Yeah. Like I play keyboard and I've played since I was 8. So I'm some sort of musician, but actually have a real professional go and work to create a real piece of music that makes sense for that piece completely. So I kind of got it in at 3 a.m. and it managed to work. And now we have something that's a bit more than just a working, you know, product. It's something that's more professional.
And Noel, thank you.
Did you two have a prior interest in astronomy and kind of this world? Was this new to you guys to work with like the NASA footage and this subject matter?
I think we both liked the movie Interstellar. You know, just as like hey, that's a film that I admire. How about you? And then, but no, I mean, no prior interest. I've never even worked on a sci-fi project before, honestly. So this was a brand new, fresh start for me. I don't know about you.
I like stars. That's about it, though. To be honest, like I took astronomy in college to avoid the chemistry requirement, and that's about my extent of interest. But Nancy, who directed this piece, she's a visionary. She absolutely loves space. She loves what NASA has done, and she was the one who really saw the contest in the first place and said, "Hey, I should get a team together." So really, props to Nancy on like pulling together this and providing the vision for us to do it.
That's awesome. Yeah, because it's such a fun thing to play around with, like having that footage as like kind of a prompt. Seems like such a great starting off point for writing a film. Reminded me like 2001 Space Odyssey is like one of my favorite films, and visually I feel like kind of has some similarities. Obviously, like you guys didn't shoot the the footage yourselves, but using that footage and like collecting the right pieces to put in like a puzzle, it visually just turned out pretty amazing.
We really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And I wanted to ask about there's sort of an artificial intelligence side to this film that is really interesting and also very relevant to today, and kind of the relationship between Naomi and Kiara is something that is like kind of it's kind of amazing that they've developed this relationship just through talking to each other over the years. Did this film kind of change your view towards artificial intelligence in any way, or did it make you think deeper about it in kind of today's world as we head towards the ChatGPT coming out and like all these new technologies that we're having to learn and adapt to?
Reading through the comments on YouTube probably made me think more about AI, because there were a few people that commented on the link that's posted where this video lives on dust. That were saying things like, I work in AI and this film really moved me for the same reasons. I've been involved in this industry. How come operators and AI programs can't have relationships and things like that? They were pointing out kinds of things that I didn't think of. I kind of treated this as like, this is another creative project. our story involves a character that's an AI satellite and a NASA sound operator. Let's begin. But yeah, the audience base, the people that received this did have many things to say and comment about AI, which for me maybe began more conversation, but before that I didn't think much about it.
Yeah, I think when we were creating this film originally, ChatGPT was not a thing. However, 2 years later when we're releasing On Dust, now AI has suddenly gotten so much more FaceTime, if that makes sense. And now it's kind of this democratized thing where you can go on your phone. And right now I could talk to this AI model that could tell me a lot of very interesting information, just like that.
I think this film really was timely because I watched the film Ex Machinima the other night, and I thought it was really funny because they were like, the artificial intelligence is gonna like immediately ruin the world, and like now we're actually it's here, and we're kind of learning how it works, and right now it kind of feels more of like a tool and like a helper, whereas in this film there's an actual relationship that's built, which I think is super interesting, and interesting thing to think about. It kind of sparked all these questions in my brain when I watched To Air. So I think, like I said, very timely, and it's going to actually spark a lot of conversation, which is great.
Yeah, I think one thing that we wanted to do with Kiara is, like Tony said, she's a character in the film. So as opposed to thinking, oh, well, she's like the computer or anything like that, but like trying to personify and help the audience to form an emotional connection with a character who happens to be made of, machine parts and is artificial intelligence. She's still a legitimate character in the story, and she's important to that NASA engineer who throughout her career at NASA is actively communicating with, connecting with, and sharing about our world to this satellite who happens to be far away, to this character who happens to be far away, to the point where this character, who just happens to be thousands and thousands and thousands of miles away, is asking questions about the very place from where it was sent. And I think there's something important in terms of that self-reflection of like, where am I from? And why is that important? And also, what am I doing near a black hole? She's a real character. Yeah. She's not just AI. She's not just, parts put together.
And Naomi's answer to Kiara's question is perfect. I mean, there's no other way to answer that other than, as humans, we ask ourselves the same question. We don't have the answer the same way that you don't have the answer. So that kind of, it's a really interesting relationship. And I think one of my favorite lines, when Kiara is saying how, they've heard the rings of Saturn, and they've experienced this and experienced that as floating through space. These are things that, humans never will do. So it's a trait that this machine is experiencing, or that it has, that we can't even experience, and we're just kind of hearing from millions of miles away. And we do work with rovers like on Mars, and it's interesting to have the I just really love the way Kiara was written as a character. Like you said, she is a character. They are a character in the film. What are films that inspire you guys? What are things that kind of sparked that fire in you guys?
Flubber was really good, and Land Before Time. From the 80s.
Land Before Time.
Are you with me on this? Are you backing me up on these answers?
I didn't know that we.
Okay.
Sorry.
No.
Wasn't ready for that one. Excuse me for a moment. Land Before Time was unexpected.
Okay.
If that inspires you, man, it's art, so that's cool.
Is it? Gosh, Cloud Atlas is a movie that I will constantly revisit. Maybe every other year or so, I'll dive deep into that film and just let myself be moved by it. I mentioned Interstellar. I don't think there's been many movies that in cinema and then when streaming it, that just really move you on such an emotional level that has scale. So I mentioned that earlier, but that's a great example. And then, as far as I think a movie that just really continues to stay with me for the sense of human dialogue and human relationships is an old one, but Casablanca. Just a beautiful film, a great film about romance, obviously, a tragic romance, but through that story and setting. But just, I kind of choose these examples just to show what cinema is capable of on different scales and different times. And those movies really move me.
Yeah. I was going to say about Interstellar, there's a bit of a tie between Interstellar and To Air that I know Interstellar, when they created it, they were really trying to make sure it was accurate, and it was not just like a visual spectacle. It was actually like, a real replication of a black hole. And then in To Air, you're using real footage. And I think that's just it's really amazing that we're at a point where we can do that. Like in the film world, to the best of our ability, we can recreate these things that are only up to our imagination. Normally they'd just be up to our imagination, but using film to kind of, at least in To Air's, I just love the character of Kiara. We see Kiara in the film with the visual effects float, so it's pretty incredible stuff.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note, it's good to go back and take a look at very old film, silent film, like A Trip to the Moon, which was created by a French director. It's important to take a look at these older films that cost so much money at that time to make, and then taking a look at our production, which was honestly produced for very little to no money. We had no budget, so it was very much self-funded. Looking at the way technology has progressed to this point, where you have access, even through Adobe Premiere, which you can get a 30-day free trial to. I don't work for Adobe. It's just amazing. You can have access to this software, which was also used in these very recent films, such as Everything Everywhere All at Once. That was edited with Adobe Premiere, and you can go and you can get that now. Yeah. So looking at the difference between a film that was made in 1903 about going to the moon, and the moon has a face and they like crash the rocket into it and all this stuff, and then looking at our film, it's amazing how this technology is available to almost anybody. If you have an internet connection and a computer that can run it. And if you have access to your local cable access TV station, then you also can get involved and create film like this. So we really hope that this film also inspires other people to create their own video like this. Yeah. I mean, you can do it now. There's almost no excuse because you have access to that technology.
That technology and free footage on NASA.com. I'm not sponsored. But
I'm not sponsored by Adobe either. But yeah, like you have access to so much. Yeah. Like if you feel creative, create. Try.
So Dust is the YouTube channel that this is on. How did you guys get the video onto Dust?
I'll tell that story. This is a strange story, and this may not reflect very well in what I'm about to say, but this is just the truth of the matter. So our film moved through a number of film festivals and was collecting awards, and we were really grateful because when we submitted it to NASA, we didn't even place as a semifinalist. And props to anybody that did well in that contest because it inspired the best out of all of us. But we were really amazed that this film was just being so well received internationally. It was moving to different places, collecting audience awards. And when it landed at the Boston Science Fiction Film Festival in the Somerville Theater, we had a problem. The venue itself was not conducive for screening films. Imagine you're watching a movie with full sunlight landing on the screen, on top of sitting at dusty chairs where you have people traveling across the country. In this case, our director flew from Portugal at the time to come watch this movie, and the conditions to see this were just unacceptable. There were people talking from the production staff during Q&A. So I'm not painting this in a great light, but this was all to say, there were a lot of people that were upset with this kind of experience. There's a lesson here because Nancy, who is a fighter and does not take no lightly and is, does not let her work be, treated in such a way, believed that with all of us putting this work into this film that we deserve better and other filmmakers deserve better. So she had a meeting with the director, and by the end of it, I think the director had said, well, your film was obviously impressive and we were very moved by it. And Dust often contacts us every year to submit new films. We think it would make sense to promote yours and recommend it to the channel. And had that film screening gone really well, I don't think we've ever would have voiced anything, or maybe they would have, identified us as like a party that was like, we're speaking up or something. But it just goes to show that even in bad environments, or environments that don't seem, reflective of like what they should be. If you speak up, some things can happen. I don't think that's the only reason. I think that we're also really proud of the work that we created. But by the time it was recommended and submitted to Dust, Nancy took it from there. She accepted the responsibilities to work with Dust to coordinate moving all of the assets to that channel. And long story short, it has 72,000 views on Dust like 4 weeks in. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's going well. And I think it's important, like when you create a piece of work, like it certainly can speak for itself. In this context, it was difficult for it to speak because of the lighting conditions and other issues. But going to bat for yourself and your creative work and your team, it's really worth it. Like, certainly it could stand on its own, but in certain cases, like, stand up for what you've done. And I think Nancy did a great job of that. And you know what? Like a whole new opportunity came out of it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that's amazing. That's a great story, and it's doing extremely well on the channel, and all the comments are, it's really impacting a lot of people that are, seeing this film, and some of these comments are really touching. I'm sure that Nancy is very proud, and she deserves for this film to be seen. So it's awesome that it's doing as well as it is.
make sure that you go watch the reaction video. We actually had one gentleman who created a reaction video to
Really?
to this piece as well. Yeah.
That's how you know.
Which is kind of interesting.
That's how you know you're successful. Is if you got people reacting to
We
it.
would love to talk to him actually, because he did not get it.
Oh,
So at the end, he was
really?
just like, "What?" So I kind of want to sit down with him.
You know what he said? At the end of the film, like the last words before like his YouTube reaction video ends, he's like, "Wait, so Kiara's her daughter?" And then it just ends, and we were like, "Okay, yeah, why not?"
Sure. So I mean, I'd love to talk to him. I want other people to react to this as well and say,
That's
like,
too funny.
what are they? I think it's valuable to see that kind of feedback directly,
Yeah.
because while it's so clear to us because we were involved in the creation of this, a lot of people are going to have a lot of different reactions to your creative work, and I think it's important to hear all of those, because just because you think it makes sense, it really doesn't guarantee anything.
Yeah, I think there's some value to the nuance of it as well, and how it kind of does require the audience to like kind of squint a little bit. It took me 2 viewings to really kind of understand what was going on, and throughout the second one, it really clicked with me, and like kind of the scope of it, and I think that's a good thing in a lot of ways.
I'll
Yeah,
shout
was
out
there anything
quickly
else?
to the writer, Jamie Reed, better known as J.M. Elliott. This is a guy who you'll probably meet too, I feel like, in your careers, if not feel it in yourselves. But sometimes you'll meet people in this industry who are made for this, really exactly the kind of person that excels in this industry, but who isn't shy from defeat. And Jamie is already on his way to directing features, fingers crossed, knock on wood and all, but he is someone that lives and breathes cinema of all ages. And so we were really lucky to work with him. He did a fantastic job. He is entirely responsible for like the literature of this film and bringing these characters to life. And while we gave reviews of the scripts, he really sat with it to create something. So we're really grateful that we got to work with him. And this is a name you will be hearing later for sure. He is already exactly on the path to sharing his work. And so we're really grateful that we got to work with this guy.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It sounds like there was a great team that was put together for this project.
Yeah,
of
there
good
really
minds.
was. It was primarily Nancy, Tony, Jamie, and myself, and we were meeting on a consistent basis to try to produce this film in COVID times. And like Tony mentioned before, it's really important to note that Nancy was in the UK.
Yeah.
Tony and I were the Boston-based crew, and then we did a lot of the primary film in the New England area, whether it was here at UMA or it was in Maine, New Hampshire, wherever we went to capture some of the nature footage. And then Jamie was in LA.
Yeah.
The whole time when he's not in Kentucky visiting his family. So he worked from all over. And so it's kind of amazing to see how COVID actually brought out a really creative opportunity for all of us. And now I think that we have shown that you can go and you can find other people to collaborate with online, work over Zoom, and make something great. So if you don't know people directly in your circle, get out there and meet people because they're across the world.
That's the great thing about this new virtual world that we live in. You can really connect with anyone. Wow, thank you guys for coming out today. This was
thank you.
was an amazing conversation. I'm really glad to have gotten your perspective on this film.
Sure.
Yeah, thanks so much.
And thank
We
you
appreciate
to Lilly for being our producer today. We appreciate you, and hopefully we'll be able to do something like this again when you guys make another film.
it. That'd be great.
Yeah. Thanks for having us.
Anytime.
Thank you.